Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second panel. So, they say that God and the devil are in the details, and that's what this panel is all about, the smaller details. The experts will weigh in on the nitty-gritty aspects of setting up offices, regulations, and operating business across the APAC region. So, Laura, please.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Unfortunately, Andrew from CIMB won't make it this morning. Can I welcome you all to the panel, and can I ask you all to introduce yourself and which company you're from?
Okay, I'm Eugenio Congiagioco. I'm the founder of APAC Management Consultancy. In 2 words, we helped many international forex brokers to enter China. We provide full consultancy, local setup, headhunting, and vice versa. We also help Chinese entrepreneurs when they want to establish or buy their brokerage house abroad.
Hi, I'm East Rosiba Marilyn. I'm from Primus Market International. We are a retail broker that is based in Cyprus. And for my job, day-to-day job, I'm dealing with all the IBs and partners that we have.
Hello, my name is Oscar Pecina. I'm the CEO of 5M Trade. We are a retail and institutional broker based in Australia. And recently, we started the expansion to Asia region, so I think we might be able to share some views on this journey as well.
Sure. I'm Sophie Gerber. I'm the director of 2 companies. One is a legal and compliance consultancy in Australia called Sophie Grace, and also a transaction reporting firm that does the trade reporting requirements for derivatives in Australia and the UK.
Thank you very much. Welcome. I'd like to kick off the panel today and ask you a little bit from a general perspective and from your experiences about setting up in Asia. And Eugenio, I think best place to start, China.
Okay, it's a very wide question. Usually, I mean, we receive many requests very often from many parties in UK, Cyprus, Australia, and other jurisdictions. And one of the first things that I tell to my clients is that they need to understand the concept of adapting to a different environment. Usually, when these brokers approach China, they have already expanded in other jurisdictions, and they've been successful there, so they feel self-confident. They say, okay, we have a model to expand. And this is actually worse, because when they enter China, they think that the same model is going to work, but it doesn't. And by the time they realize, they're already down $500,000 and 6 months. So the important is to listen, to understand, and then to apply what you learn, because that is another common case of a client who invests in consulting, gets all the opinion he needs, and then he still goes ahead with his original plan. So that is something that I think this is by far the most important thing to understand to enter China.
I'm going to stop you right there and direct this at Sophie. So a lot of the brokers will go and get more of the well-known regulations, such as ASIC and UK FCA and SISEC licenses. And then they will possibly create a marketing operation based on targeting the Asia region. How that onboarding and those clients that are brought on, will they really get the full scope of the broker, or can you comment a little bit further on that?
Yeah, I mean, along the same lines as what Eugenio was saying, the difficulty that we're seeing is that people are using, Asian firms are using regulation in some of the respected jurisdictions like Australia and the UK, but they're not giving their clients the benefit of the protections offered by those particular regulations. So it is a bit of a problematic thing, but there's firms out there just out on the floor actually that provide quite good services to the retail client and tell them all about what's actually happening and connect the clients. So we're definitely seeing a movement where clients are becoming much more educated about the fact that they might not be getting the protections that they think they're getting. The difficulty is the sheer volume of people in Asia. So there's always more people that can fall victim to brokers that aren't establishing and giving the protections to their clients.
If I just may have a word, and I think it would be good to hear the opinion from both Sophie and Eugenie on that, because from our perspective, we've been approached multiple times by different entities based in Asia, which assume, okay, we'll just start cooperation with IFM Trade, like, then we'll tell everyone that we're licensed, and that's the solution to all of the problems. And many times we had to kind of explain that this is not how it works. And I think both Sophie and Eugenio, they're facing most of this type of cases. And I think the solution is if you want to do it right, do it with the right partner. But you have to do it in the right way. There are no half solutions in this environment, which I think it's quite a common misconcept about being regulated by ASIC or getting the license as a stamp that you put, which I think it happens a lot, and the perception is slowly changing. But this is the element that requires a lot of education. I don't know if you agree with me.
Yeah, I completely agree with it's a huge issue that we're facing, and I think a lot of the crackdowns that we're seeing, and which is upsetting so many people, like the ESMA proposals to cut leverage, that's in response not to the big players doing things unconscionably and there being issues with the big players. Those things that are happening, they're reactions to the widespread misconduct that's going on. And if those people stopped, then we could all keep going, and the people who are operating properly could keep going and probably be largely unaffected by these widespread, crazy changes to regulation. But whilst they continue, the rest of us suffer.
So let me put it to all of you. What are the new regulations for 2018? And I mean, how will they really affect all the brokers outside and any brokers who are looking at the opportunity of setting up in the Asian market?
So in my earlier answer, I was referring more about the global brokers who want to enter China. But as I said, we also serve these Chinese entrepreneurs when they want to set up their operations. And there are very different kinds of them. Unfortunately, the most common kind is someone who I always say comes to us and thinks that getting a license is like buying apples at the market. They say, okay, here is the money, give me a license. And we always try to explain that it has nothing to do with that. It's a matter of background, of motivation, and so on. Then there is another kind, which are these guys who are very successful with the former exchanges, local exchanges in China, and now they are trying to set up. So usually they already have a decent background understanding from the financial services point of view, but they never had exposure to what is required from compliance point of view in the international landscape. And in many cases, we try to stop them not only because of the challenge ahead in obtaining the license, proving the right background, but because we are always afraid that they do not understand what it takes. If they take the license, what happens then? In the sense that many of them think, okay, I get FCA, as Oscar said, all my problems are solved, but then you have the limitation for leverage, IB, payment the commission, and so on, and most of them are like, okay, we will deal with it later. Or they try to leverage on a brand with a foreign license to then operate a second entity less regulated. So this is something that can be done only if you plan it in a very smart and compliant way, where you make a clear distinction of where the client is opening with, but this is not what we see most of the time. In terms of, the next regulations right now, we all know that Australia has not been, I mean, issued, a license recently, but it took like them 30 months, but I think you will be able to also elaborate on this. And so Australia is generally acquiring a new license unless you buy one, and even to buy is not easy. UK is still possible as long as you can meet the requirements, but now most brokers, including we have some UK brokers who come to us to help them to set up offshore, because most of them, they already told us that by the end, in the next 3-4 months, they will probably stop acquiring no-new clients in Europe.
Marlene, tell me this, because you are in business development, you're speaking to partners on a daily basis, and you're really kind of living the broker side on the ground. How do you feel about the kind of aspect of localization, and if brokers are really nailing that with their clients and their partners?
Well, I would say that localization, I think I will actually mention many times over here. It's very, very important. I would say it's the #1 priority when a broker wants to enter, especially Asia market, because Asia market is very segmented. It's very multicultural. So, for example, just take Malaysia as example. It's the country where people speak 3 languages. They speak Chinese, they speak Indians, and also Malay and English. So, how do you cater this kind of market? You know, I mean, it's good. They can accept English on, you know, if you put a campaign, or you wanna put your websites full in English, it's fine. But you wouldn't capture 100% of the market. That's why for a lot of brokers nowadays, they provide websites with the different languages. But not only that, any of your approach must be very culture sensitive. Yeah. You're talking about let's say next month, Chinese New Year coming soon. A lot of people are looking to China, but they forgot that, Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia could be a country that also celebrate Chinese New Year. Maybe you can throw any promotions in that country. So that would be one of the things that they have to look for. Second thing is also the existence of local representative. It's very important, because clients in Asia needs to feel that we are near to them. They will be more responsive to their own, I would say it's to their own people. It's very obvious based on my experience on my clients in, say, Indonesia. Because for me, I'm originally from Indonesia. So to communicate with them, it's easier for me, because I know what the culture is, what is their habit, what are they looking for in the market, and they are more open towards their own people to give feedback. So localization, again, it's something that has to be put into consideration in setting up, in profiling your market, in your marketing strategies. That's from my opinion.
And Oscar, but you're operating out of Australia. However, you would obviously deal with the Asian market. How do you feel that you're kind of hitting the target on localizing and getting this kind of return?
Yeah, I think it's
Or
it's a topic.
what are the best practices from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's not a secret. It's like, a topic that comes through basically all of the panels that are happening at this expo. Like, saying that the secret is to do things locally, and you cannot just operate from Australia, UK, and bring the exactly same model and try to apply it in Asia, which Asia itself consists of many different jurisdictions as well. Each one is different. So I think that is the secret ingredient. Is like to make sure that you're a global company, but you then act locally. And I think we are fortunate enough to learn on the other companies' mistakes. So we went to the right person. We cooperate with Eugenio, which helped us to...
Panel promotion here.
But
I'll pay you later.
But actually, it makes a difference. It makes a difference instead of coming to the market and trying to do to do different things and see if it works. It makes a big difference. If you work with the people that have experience, if you have a local team that worked on this market, that know how to how to offer your products to the clients, how to approach IBs, what is important. I think it was interesting summary at the previous panel as well to see that basically all the local IBs and companies they shown what elements are most important for the local market, which is not in line with what is most important in Australia or Europe. So it indicates how much difference there is. So I think it is really important not just to say like I understand, like I'll translate to local language or we'll change something slightly. It's changing the mindset completely. And I think in our case it helped a lot as well that there is direct communication with the local team, with the local experience, directly with the management of the company. Because I think in many of the companies, there are like so many steps, and then it's
feels
getting
far away. Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting stuck at a compliance level, or like someone doesn't like something, and all of a sudden like you cannot push it forward. And the market is changing. The market is changing like very fast.
Constantly.
So,
Constantly.
I think that's the secret. It was a big challenge, I would say, at the beginning, just to understand that it operates differently. But once it's done, I think that's the secret to
And
make.
I guess it's all about really kind of optimizing keep trying different things and changing it and seeing what works and doesn't. Sophie, I want to be a little controversial for a moment. And we're still going to remain on the topic of localization. I think there's a lot of local challenges and maybe a bit of red tape around that. How can a broker really understand what those challenges are in a market and the legal perspectives and how to control and enter and maybe avoid getting themselves into trouble possibly?
I wouldn't say that's a particularly controversial question, but I would just reiterate what Eugenio said. I mean, if you come to a country and there's someone there who specializes in giving advice about how to operate in that country, take their advice, or at least take some of it on board, because I think it's rife with people who ask questions and then go off and do other things. I mean, we get a lot of situations where people nod and just keep nodding, and then they sort of say nothing, and then they go off, and they haven't taken anything on board. It's disappointing. It's a boring way also to do a job. So follow the rules would be the best start, and take the advice.
Also because when they come back after 6 months to ask you to repair the damage they already did, is usually more time consuming and more expensive for them to repair. It happens several times.
I think this is the challenge, like the different cultures, and I think it works like both ways. I said about one part like understanding the local market in Asia, but it's the other way around also, like to understand what are the what is the culture and how the local regulator operates, whether it's like UK or Australia, and find a sweet spot that will satisfy both parties, which sounds easy, but it's a very challenging
That is
task.
the most challenging part by far, and it might take years to crack properly. Yes.
So I would say that really listening to the people on the ground and your IBs will give you a lot of obvious insight into the markets. Marilyn, do you believe that brokers are really listening to their clients and their IBs, or do you think they could be better at that, and maybe how can they be better at that?
Sorry. I personally think being a businessman, brokerage is a business. Most of those that listen to the local needs survive and thrive in the market. It's very simple in the theory. Well, again, like what previously discussed, that it was not something that is it's easier to say than done. Listening to the market, we always mentioned this anytime. I think in any of the panel, localization, listen to the market and all that. But in the practice, it will take time. Again, just like what Eugenio said, it will take time to jot down every details on every difference in every market because market is just very saturated. It's just very different. The demand on this market, on the previous panel, the demand on the China market might be very different with the demand in Singapore market. China market, people look into supporting IB on the rebate, on the benefits of the IBs to derive the business. In Singapore market, the clients are pretty much very, I would say, they are very educated in terms of finance as an overall, and they are very spread sensitive. So it's very, very totally extreme, different approach to the market. So again, a lot of broker has been adapting to the market, but it to one extent, I think it will be not 100%, probably 70% or 80%, but those that listen to the market will have a better business and will grow.
And tell me this, Oscar, how does all of this compare to, let's say, the Australian market?
Yeah, I'm like, listening to the conversation, and I'm like, thinking we're talking about like, different challenges, different things that might be like, problematic. Like a lot of those like, dark clouds, and it's good to be aware of that. But I think, it's worth saying that okay, it's not impossible. It's not like that completely challenging, and it can be done. Because I don't want to like discourage people from either like starting the business in China or like the Chinese IBs, for example.
It takes much more to discourage them.
But in saying that, I think a lot of brokers can also focus maybe too heavily in one market. And then you also have the challenge of ethnic risk and putting all your eggs in one basket,
Absolutely.
all your budget in one region, and maybe not targeting properly. What do you kind of
Absolutely.
have to say about that, and how can brokers sort of avoid that happening?
I think you got to like spot on. It makes sense to be present on a different markets, and each one is different. So not only from the marketing perspective, how to approach it, but as mentioned previously, like the clients look at the different elements. For example, in China, it might be important the regulatory part or how fast the contact with the client support or withdrawals are being processed. While in Australia, and for particular reasons, because of the bad examples in the past when a lot of companies create a lot of issues for local clients. While in Australia, like this is like taken for granted. So the clients are focusing more on the tight spreads or in a different way of contact with the customer support. So even between those two markets, there are differences, and then there are like so many markets globally. It makes sense to diversify, even from the perspective of the instruments being traded, where we can see in Australia, obviously, there is a certain skew towards the local currency crosses and the events happening within our time zone. China, once again, historically, because of the high popularity of the commodity exchanges, it's more gold heavy. I would say Europe, once again, it's in between. It's a different style of trading, and the clients, they trade more indices, and they might be more involved in the U.S. markets, and then obviously like the entire Americas region. Those will be like different instruments, which is something that you want to have as a broker, to have a diversified book of clients, trading diversified instruments, and as you said, not putting all the eggs in one basket, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Okay, speaking of diversification, we can't really have a panel at this expo and not bring up ICOs and cryptos. I'll direct this at anyone who would like to take it. What's your general feeling about setting up in Asia and with regards to crypto and ICOs? Maybe Eugenio, you're the man to answer this.
In theory, I should not speak, since I deal with China, I should not speak because the government might do something to me, but... No.
We'll wait
China
for
is
you at the
still,
airport.
notwithstanding everything, China is still a very active market for this. But I take it from a different perspective, which is not much about the crypto exchanges, but about brokers offering cryptocurrencies. I think all considered, I will not make consideration if it is profitable, if it is risky. I think it is useful because the news portals and on TV speak much more about cryptocurrencies than about leverage foreign exchange trading. So to some extent, I see cryptocurrency in the same way as many brokers used to add, for example, the stock equities in the past, because they say, okay, we are not going to make a penny from offering stock equities, but we will show them something that they know, and then we cross-sell the Forex. So for cryptocurrencies, it's probably going to be the same in the sense that you're offering something that everyone is talking about, and later you can cross-sell the other products. So basically, you get some kind of free marketing out of it. I mean, if you could trade lead singers, you could trade whatever can get you on the news and can attract people works.
Yeah, I mean, there is no doubt that the minute crypto, ICO, or any of the buzzwords are mentioned, that viewership is increased exponentially. So tell me this, what are the other trends that we can see and opportunities, let's say, for the Asian markets for 2018? Sophie, you look like you want to answer this.
I think the Asian markets, in terms of the strong regulatory power, so particularly Australia, we're going to see a big movement of interest, more than what we've previously had, which has been pretty strong, away from Europe back to Australia, just because of the issues with the ESMA leverage cap. I can't make any promises that there won't be similar issues coming in Australia, but it will take a little longer than what the ESMA one is working on. I mean, in Australia we have another issue coming in, which is the client money rules. So from April, brokers can't use client money to hedge anymore. It's certainly been an interesting issue over the last few years for the different brokers involved in the space. ASIC just sent out a survey the other day asking people what they're going to do with their A or B book strategy from April. It was a little disappointing.
And what were the kind of responses from that?
People haven't submitted them yet, but I think that regardless of what people say, I'm not sure that there's much that the regulator can do. It is a survey that they probably should have sent out about 3 years ago. But I think that regulators hoping for some movement or changes or sales or people going bust. So we'll wait to see what happens there.
So will the big players remain and the little guys disappear? Is that what we're thinking?
I think what will happen is that there might be people who decide they want to give up and move on, or if we have a black swan event, then maybe everyone will go bust overnight.
You're a harsh woman.
That's
what I'm known for.
But I think it's a good move, and I'm coming from Europe and running financial institutions in Europe. I was actually kind of surprised how much flexibility there was provided by ASIC from the client funds perspective. So I think out of all of the moves of different regulators, this is the one that actually benefits the client. So it makes sure that the broker keeps the funds segregated and they're big enough to be able to fund the operation. So I think, as you mentioned, probably will wipe out some of the maybe smaller players or people that had a business model that was more risky. So I think it's a good move for the market. And I think from regulatory perspective, we know what's happening in Europe. I think everyone is curious how it's going to develop with ESMA, with CISENC implementing already the limitations, with the regulator in Poland being quite strict, with FCA planning some changes as well. So you can see that I won't even mention the some other jurisdictions when FX was completely banned. But from our perspective, actually, it creates an opportunity. We see a lot more clients who used to trade with European brokers, or in the past with US brokers or Japanese ones, and they're looking for a place where they can trade safely, so reputable jurisdiction where the funds will be protected, where they know that broker will do things properly, and at the same time not being limited in how they want to trade, what instruments they want to trade, what leverage they want to use. And I think at the moment Australia is like spot on. It regulates the element that actually influence the client, and like, you know, to make sure that they're better protected. At the same time, giving them the freedom to trade in a way that they want to trade. So it's all like in a investor hands. So I think.
Marilyn, you tell me, so, I mean, what's the word on the street? How does the kind of Asian market, and how do they view international brokers and yeah, I mean, based on that kind of regulation?
Well, for the Asia market, I think, well, if you're talking about the regulations on their point of view, Asia market will still look up into two main regulations, which is FC and ASICs. You know, from the day-to-day conversation with all the clients, they always mention that these two regulations always give them a safety or peace of mind in offering the safety of funds, in being very strict in the regulation. So for Asia market, they will still love these two jurisdictions.
So is that the sort of best marketing strategy when targeting Asia? I mean, what do you think are the areas that brokers should really focus on? What should their messaging be?
Well, in terms of regulation, yes, you know, but in terms of if you're talking more specifically into marketing, okay, into marketing strategy, I guess we still stick with online and offline marketing, but in the way that online marketing should actually complement the offline marketing. Offline marketing, again, these are things that is more, you can do things that is more local here. In 2018, a lot of the offline marketing in retail broker will stir more into the partners, which are the IBs, instead of the direct marketing into the clients by doing a lot of seminars, the small ones, no more like big seminars with 300 people and all that, but it's more on a smaller scale seminar, partnering with our IBs. Most of the broker has been doing that, and the result is good. Right. For online marketing, mostly it will actually show your presence. You know, how good you are, where are you? You have been all over the world. Is it more on, are you a global broker? That's what you show in the online marketing. But again, I would say in this year, a lot of broker will do more activities than just a promotions, just a statement online in the market.
Yeah, I think they'll really have to. So I suppose for 2018, would you agree that maybe the business model has to be a little bit more flexible to accommodate these changes?
If I can, reconnect to the previous question.
Of course.
So I agree with what Oscar was saying, that Australia probably right now has the best balance in between regulation but also flexibility, and the fact that from the 1st of April there is going to be a higher capital requirement. Actually, I don't think that the small brokers in Australia will disappear, because they know that their license is worth so much money, and is worth so much money. The fault is of ASIC that is not releasing new licenses. And so I think probably what is going to happen is M&A fever, in the sense that particularly, now I'm not speaking in this moment about China. Of course, Chinese will be interested in that, but it's harder to get, let's say, approved by ASIC as new controllers. But for example, now UK is facing this big issue about dealing with the IB's leverage and so on. So it might be really a great opportunity for UK brokers to capitalize the Australian companies that need more capital to meet the new capital requirements, and that will create an environment where we have on one side UK-Australian brokers, very regulated environment, and on the other side a satellite of offshore brokers, and then the war can start.
So can you see a lot more brokers then moving their kind of targeting and operations towards these Asian markets because of the stricter regulations?
Let's say UK. If we speak about UK brokers, and so many of them they come to Asia because the motivation can be different. So there is the client who comes. Okay, we need to be in China because everyone is in China. We need to be in China because we want to make profit, so we would like you to tell us what is the strategy to make profit. And then there is the one that says we need to be in China because in 2 years we want to be listed or get the investor, so I don't care about the profitability, I just want to show as much clients and deposits and so on. So it depends also on their strategy. And in these cases, so China is of course a good market for this. In terms of going offshore, yes, as I said earlier, basically I see that now many UK brokers and Cyprus brokers are setting up operations in offshore places, and they are already directing the clients, the extra EU clients, to these jurisdictions. Of course, both the SISEC and the FCA are perfectly aware of this, and they are monitoring this. I believe, but I am no lawyer, I believe that as long as they will keep a proper separation and they will explain very clearly, without making names, but I saw a couple of brokers that are doing this pretty well. To distinguish, you can go here or
Go
there.
on, tell us one.
For example, one broker that I noticed that I think is doing something is Stickmill, because I saw that they have a clear distinction with the FCA on one side and Seychelles on the other, and of course also the client onboarding is different. So as long as it is done this way, I believe, particularly FCA, everything is based to interpretation in the end. So there is space for that.
Sophie, could you give us some, let's say, setup and operational success factors? From your experience, of course.
That's an interesting question. Certainly, basically reiterating what I said before, you need to have staff on the ground who, for the Australia context, who speak English and understand English, and then understand that there's rules of law in a country like Australia which have to be followed. And the rules, once you come to Australia, the rules are for everyone. It's not a choice whether you comply or not, or if you choose not to comply, don't expect to be around for very long. So I would say not complying is not a success factor. Complying, if you do that and you follow the rules and you have staff and you have proper operations on the ground, it's a long-term strategy, but it does pay off. Short-term strategies, they might create quick profits, but you won't be around for long. And certainly the people that you leave behind won't like you very much. So they would be my key points there.
So just to really wrap up, I wonder if you can all kind of give me your biggest sort of advice for 2018 and what really opportunities lie ahead, whether that be marketing, regulation, legal, operational, etc. Please just give me your thoughts.
Pass to someone else. I'll check my crystal ball in the meantime, and then I'll let you know.
What did you say?
I will check my crystal ball and let you know. No, it's very hard to do forecasts about the future. For example, as I said, I bring mostly the perspective from China, and frankly speaking, we do not even know what is going to happen in the next 3 months. So from China point of view, we are monitoring the situation. Any person who is dealing with China know what has been happening in the last couple of months, where the authorities are going down against not only the brokers, but even the providers of the brokers, like the payment service providers. And there is this new authority, the NIFA, in China, that has issued warning this time specifically against the foreign brokers operating online.
What is NIFA? What does
NIFA
it stand for?
is basically the equivalent of the NFA in USA, but in China. and with specialization on the internet. So it's National Internet Financial Association. So it's an association, is not one of the 4 commissions. In China, you have the CSRC, CIBRC, CDS, basically for securities, insurance, and so on. This is not one of these 4, but it's an association, but still it has the power to issue some warnings. And the NIFA is the organism that was behind, you know that recently many websites were banned in China, so NIFA was the entity behind this. It was kind of fixed in some way by the brokers. Now we're waiting what is going to happen next. By the end of March, there are the final meetings of the Congress of the Communist Party in China that they do every 5 years, where they decide the policy for the future. So let's see what happens by the end of March. Another couple of months for them to implement. Then we understand we will understand what is really happening in China. So for my clients who operate in China right now, is on hold and see. Yes.
Oh, watch
fly
this
down,
space.
hold and fly down. Yes,
And
for a few
Marilyn,
months.
when are we going to make our millions?
Well, well, I would say for this year for retail broker, as per all the feedback that we got from our partners in Southeast Asia market, there is actually not much of changes in terms of regulation or what you should do, but we can't ignore crypto fever. So especially in countries like Singapore, like people are really, really into that already. And I will suggest, my suggestion is very, very short, that right into the trend. You know, whether it's a bubble or it's something that will worth value in the long term, it's about now.
I think I'll have, 2 points of view. One will be from the perspective of clients or IBs, and I think the key is to cooperate with someone who's reliable and and efficient. And I think this is kind of like a move that it's happening at the moment on the market. A lot of partners that used to cooperate with offshore companies, they realize that either due to the clients requiring regulated companies or because of some issues that they had with the companies, they naturally move towards bigger or better regulated brokers. So I think this is kind of the move from the IB and retail clients' perspective that is going to continue throughout 2018. And from the broker's perspective, I think one element is do things right and properly, because we see that all of the regulators are tightening the rules, and if you do things in the right way, you're gonna be okay. But if you try to cut some corners, that's not gonna work in the future. And at the same time, be flexible, because the market is changing. As mentioned before, cryptocurrencies they've been on the market and we've been offering them for a year, but all of a sudden in the last few months, everyone talks about it, and it opens completely new audience, or even as mentioned, you need to adapt your marketing method. So sometimes the online marketing works on one market, or even if it worked on one market, it stopped working, and then you need to switch to some offline methods. We've seen in Malaysia a great success of our educators getting the clients where clients are more eager to have offline kind of experience. So I think do things properly, but be flexible.
Yes, agree. And Sophie, what do you think?
So I think we'll still be here next year talking about something. I don't think the world's going to end. But every year there does seem to be someone else throwing a curveball at the industry, and sometimes there is conversation, oh, the world's going to end, we're not going to be here, the industry's going to be over. I think we'll still be here next year. So you make a choice in that based on the things we've all said. You can choose to be here, and I think most of us will.
Will crypto still be here next year?
We will not be talking about cryptos next year.
Ooh, watch this space. I'd like to open up questions to the audience. Please be controversial. Grill them if you can. No questions? No?
Means we were very clear.
Don't any of you want to know anything about setting up in Asia? No?
Matt, you sure you don't have questions about client money? This is your chance.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to Finance Magnets. Thank you to all of the panel. And on behalf of all the panel, please feel free to come and ask us questions later. Thank you very much.